Hey, welcome back to Score on Business, and we still have Blain Wease here with the Provincial Development Group. And so let's change focus a little bit and go to kind of branding and growth. What is a brand and why is it important?
Sure. Well, I think this is one of the most confusing topics for a lot of folks, especially newer to the business world or entrepreneurship, in that there's a perception that a brand is just a logo or a brand is just a tagline or something rather small in your world. But a brand, as I explain to my clients, is it's your professional reputation. So when I think of Pete, do I think, you know, he's professional, he serves people well, he does what he says he's going to do, he keeps his word? Well, those are all brand attributes, and so not only does every company have a brand, but every person within the company has a brand, and that's why hiring is so important, because you want to hire people that represent your brand in a consistent way, right, and not misrepresent your brand or undo what you've spent a lot of time and money establishing. Right.
And especially, you know, at a lot of companies, the customer-facing people are often lower paid, but they're the face.
Exactly, and one of my favorite questions to illustrate that is when there's some confusion or haze around this, I'll ask my client, well, who cuts your hair? And if they've been going to the same, you know, if it's Sally, and they've been going to Sally for 10 years, well, they never say Great Clips or Bob's Salon or whatever the name is. They'll always say Sally. And I illustrate that point to say, well, Sally is the brand. She's the face of that organization. If they're 1,000 people strong or they're one salon with 5 people, she is the brand to you. And it takes people back to just what you're saying.
Well, you know, I spent most of the 90s working at FedEx, and I'm here to tell you the delivery drivers are the ones who made it work for us.
You're exactly right. In fact, some people who really understand this, if they still have a receptionist, which I know is not as popular as it used to be, but that person at the front desk greeting people and greeting, you know, sometimes very important people to your firm, they are a leading face or you know, a significant face of that brand, because they're the first person that you're going to greet in the lobby.
Okay. Good. So how is brand related to growth?
Sure. Well, because your brand is your professional reputation, people are either going to be attracted to that brand and the attributes of that brand, or they're going to be repelled. For good or for ill, there's no neutrality to your brand. And so when you think of brand and the relationship to growth, oftentimes we think very lofty, we think very visionary, but I'll give you an example of where this works into our world. We host these events at the Bridgestone, as you referred to a little earlier in the show, called the Nashville Leadership Luncheons, and we spend over 100 hours per event in preparation for it.
Which that's one of the best networking events in town.
Thank you. I appreciate you saying that. So we can bring in, you know, we've had the commissioner of the NHL, Gary Bettman, speak. We've had the CEO of Tractor Supply, Joe Scarlett, speak. All of that to say, those are big rocks in our strategy to make our guests enjoy their time. But if you come and it takes you 15 minutes to find your name tag and it's disorganized and no one's there to greet you, you're going to have a bad experience. And when you walk away, you're likely to think, wow, I took 15 minutes to find my name tag. That was a negative experience. So no matter who we have as our speaker, that's not going to offset a little thing, but an important thing. And that process of how we greet you and how we sign you in is a part of our brand. And that's an example of a smaller thing that can make a big difference.
Oh yeah, it certainly. Of course, you all handle that well, but your point being the folks who are dealing with the tags and whether they've got them alphabetical and all that stuff, that makes a big difference.
It does. It does. And when you're appealing to senior level leaders and entrepreneurs like we are for the event, and you have the Nashville Predators that are a part of it, and the Bridgestone Arena that are a part of it, then that expectation's all the higher, because the folks that we're appealing to, they're expecting a first-class experience. And if we don't deliver that in the little things, then we compromise our brand.
Yeah. Yeah, so let's touch bases for a moment back to revenue growth.
Yes.
So What advice would you give? Oh, this is an awesome question. What advice would you give a non-sales entrepreneur in hiring and managing their first salesperson?
Sure. So this is a fun question, because non-sales entrepreneurs who are going down this pathway to hire their first salesperson automatically start thinking about people like themselves because that's what they're comfortable with, right? But that's the exact opposite of what you need, because the gifts and talents and abilities that a salesperson have are unique, and that's what makes them effective in their role. So if you hire an engineering type or a highly operational type that you're comfortable with and that are, you know, in your circle of peers, because you tend to hang around people that are like you, then you're not going to have someone who's effective in building those relationships and making your product or service appealing in the marketplace. So that's the first thing I'd say. And then the second thing is, have realistic expectations and support them. If you think that you've never had a person in this role and they're going to go out in 30 days and bring in a $500,000 worth of revenue, I'm exaggerating a little bit to make a point, but people in this position tend to, again, oversimplify what it's going to take to ramp up and have unrealistic expectations.
Absolutely. And what do you say, kind of briefly, how do you work with your clients when they are, say, an engineer and they have a salesperson, a good salesperson, but they are kind of telling them what to do based from the engineering perspective rather?
Yeah, so there's a delicate balance to that, because oftentimes an engineer wants the prospect to understand enough about the product and what makes it different so that there's an appeal, which there's value in that. But you can quickly take that too far. So for instance, if 2 minutes of a summary to a busy executive would communicate that, you don't want to spend 20 minutes doing it, or you're going to lose them.
Oh, you'll lose them completely.
Exactly. So you have to balance those attributes, which have some value, with the attributes of someone who's skilled at business development.
Awesome.
And building relationships.
Well, why don't we go ahead and take one more break? And so, ladies and gentlemen, we'll be back in a moment.